So why choose safe and sound protocol out of all the things that are out there, out of all the things that you know, like regulatory activities, like different therapeutic modalities? Like why would SSP be the one to choose? I think for a lot of people, we're living in a busy capitalist world where we don't always have the time and space to actually do the things we want to do. And what I like about this program is that you do it on your time. So even though it's like a half hour each day for 10 days, you get to decide when that happens. You can take a break if you need to take a break. So it's not something that you need to find all this time for. And it is, a bottom up processing versus top down, which is what we see usually in talk therapy. So this is more of a passive modality. So while you're relaxing, this program is regulating your autonomic nervous system for you. And this is a huge deal for us with complex PTSD or PTSD or other trauma conditions such as BPD, GID. This can be huge for us because especially for me when I first started SSP, I was shocked because my nervous system was never regulated my whole life. So I was in those survival states. So hyperarousal, which is that fight or flight, anxious state, or I was disassociated. So in the hypoarousal state, where I just collapse, or I'd be depressed, or I'd be disassociated. So I was usually between those two states. I was never in this beautiful ventral vagal, the safety state, the green zone. So I never knew what it was like to connect authentically because I never had the ability to not be out of survival states. I would say since SSP, I started doing this program probably, I would say 2 years or 3 years ago now. So in the past 2 or 3 years, I've actually experienced what it's like to be regulated or in this ventral vagal state. And not just for, a little bit of time here and there, but like for actual days, for weeks sometimes. So that was this very significant shift for me. So there's huge, huge things to look for or expect potentially with the Safe and Sound protocol for folks who have trauma presentations. I've also noticed like huge positive outcomes for folks who have substance abuse issues. So usually during the program, I notice like basically everyone who had this issue all of a sudden notice they don't really want to use as much. All of a sudden they've decreased their use. They don't need to rely on it as much anymore. And that was my experience too. Like, I found that, there is less use of cannabis for me during the SSP. And then after as well, I rely on it a lot less. So I think that's a huge outcome. And I don't know that that's something a lot of people know about with the SSP. I think that's a specific outcome that is very, very exciting because there's so many people struggling with addiction. And this program can potentially help people decrease in a harm reduction way and move towards quitting or just continuing with harm reduction. So to me, that's a huge outcome. I also wanted to share my experience. Again, it's a social anxiety experience. For me, talking on the phone was like excruciating. So if someone talked to me on the phone, I was just waiting for that to be over. It felt like someone screaming in my ear. It was like so painful. I couldn't really hear what people were saying, so I would hear like wah wah wah, like Charlie Brown. Basically, I couldn't hear what the person was saying. I couldn't even engage with what they're saying. So, what is even the point of phone calls? I basically got to the point where I wouldn't pick up the phone, no matter what. I actually do phone counseling quite a bit now, but it was SSP that got me there. I don't think I would be able to do phone counseling if I hadn't have done SSP. I just couldn't hear the human voice in the same way on the phone, and it was so hard. And I don't think I'm alone in that experience. I think there's other people like me out there, people who really, really struggled with phone. calls or like just picking up the phone. It does help with that. I'm not going to say everyone's experience is the same with SSP. Some people get great, amazing outcomes. Some people don't notice anything. So that's one of the things that I think can be challenging is not knowing. But when you're working with a provider, I do think it does help because if there's something happening with the program, for example, technology gets in the way sometimes, or like you need to like decrease the amount of listening because your autonomic nervous system cannot handle the amount of listening you're doing. So a provider would help guide you through that process. So usually I see an outcome. There's usually at least one powerful outcome for each person I've worked with. Some people find it harder to notice these shifts than others, and that's okay. So I just wanted to let you know that that's part of what can happen with this program. But it's a really great program, and I really, really highly recommend it for social anxiety, for substance use, for trauma presentations, especially those of us who have been stuck in those survival states for a really long time now. It can actually be painful doing SSP the first time for some folks because their autonomic nervous system has never been regulated. It's always been a struggle to be in that ventral vagal, that nice safety state where we can be compassionate and mindful. It's just really hard to get there when you've been surrounded by trauma, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So basically, when these cases come up, we would reduce that listening from 30 minutes and kind of bring it down. See, maybe start 20 minutes and see how that goes. Just keep reducing it, titrate that risk a little bit. But anything's possible. Like you could see outcomes that are really, really great. It could take you really long to do this program, and that's okay because I do think the outcomes are worth it. Another program I will talk about later on is the integrated listening system or focus program. Now that's a long program. I will definitely do another video about that. That is a really hard program to get through. For us neurodivergent folks, it's just a big time commitment. I feel like SSP is not at all like this, so you can really work and be flexible with it. I do notice people who are neurodivergent sometimes do have an issue in terms of like time management. So basically with this program, sometimes we forget. So object permanence comes in, we're like, oh, right, I'm supposed to be doing the SSP. So again, your provider can help you out with that. You can just say, hey, I need somebody to check in on me every day. That's the only way I'm going to be able to get this done. Feel free to say those things. This is for you. This is your healing. You deserve the healing that works for you. So never, ever feel like you can't say those things. If you can't say those things to your provider, you're with the wrong provider for sure. So those are things to think about in looking at this program. This is a little bit of informed consent about what the program can and cannot do. And one of the things I do notice, like, that can be side effects, for example. I always notice like a pulsating, like in my ear, basically. It feels like my heart is in my ear. And that's the vagus nerve, right? You can feel the vagus nerve kind of reacting to the SSP. So you can feel this pulsating. Some people have headaches. Some people notice they can have like cold or flu-like symptoms. Some people notice that they go into that anxious state, as well, that hyperarousal state. But what I will note is that those things are temporary. They don't last forever. So that's something to think about. You can just remind yourself this state will pass. It's not permanent. It is temporary. But these are important things to know, right? Like flashbacks could come up, memories could come up, PTSD symptoms can come up. And again, talk to your provider about what of the playlist of SSP you want to try, because some of them have songs that may remind you of your trauma. So these are very important considerations. Some of these playlists have lyrics. And I found, for example, like Wonder is full of Disney songs, and that was so nostalgic, and I really enjoyed that. But definitely, it's a good cry for me, anyways. I think I've cried to each one of these playlists. But I think, honestly, the reason that's happened is because I'm in ventral vagal. So I'm not hiding from my emotions. I'm not disassociated from my emotions. I'm not, in so much intensity that I can't even look at my emotions in hyperarousal. I'm in ventral vagal, so I can let it go. Like I can grieve. I often find I grieve during the SSP program because basically it creates connection and wanting, yearning for connection. As a person with avoidant attachment strategy, I don't have the ability to easily reach out to others. I don't have the ability to kind of form connections in the same way other people can. So for me, it can be a grieving process. I grieve the fact that I yearn for this connection, but yet I find it so hard to go and find it. So I let it go. I cried. I cried during the program, and I enjoy that because sometimes I don't have that time for myself to cry and just process my emotions. Again, this works against the avoidant attachment strategy. Basically, what I'm doing is instead of suppressing or hiding my emotions, I'm letting them free flow. And so that's a pretty big deal, I think, when it comes to looking at the like attachment strategies as well, not just PTSD or trauma, but also the attachment strategies. It can be really helpful to move more towards security within yourself and security with others. So SSP does have that ability. I'm not going to say that will last forever, and I think it can be really helpful to do this program more than once. I tend to do it every couple months. You can do it every 6 to 8 weeks. And I highly suggest that, especially if you dysregulate and get into those survival states very easily. It could be good to do the program again, or a complex traumatic situation has come up, multiple traumas at once. Could be a good idea to go back and do this program again. So you can definitely do this program more than once, and I highly suggest it. I definitely do it as much as I can, and it makes a huge difference in my life.